The world we live in is an amazing one, full of passion, wonderment, and of course, fine wine. This is the story of one man's journey to fully understand and appreciate that world. So kick the tires and light the fires. It's time to ride between the wines.
It's Burgundian in style. Just a whisper of cherry.
Very nice legs.
This is so perfectly balanced.
Such an old world style.
Is this laced with tobacco? A total fruit bomb.
I say, Sir Ponce!
Video. All right, so we're back in the car. So this is the. So those of you who have listened to this, I was actually thinking earlier today. I was like, man, it's been a long time since I've had me get halfway through a recording and it hasn't recorded right. That hasn't been since my early podcast, but here we are. We're back in here. It is recording. I see a little light, and I have such an exciting person with me today, talking about an exciting person. So this is Ian Ribowsky, excuse me. He works with Jean-Luc Colombo, and I'm so thrilled to have you in the car with me today. And you've got so many stories, so I'm going to try to pack as many as I can in these couple segments this afternoon. But if you wouldn't mind, again, telling me who Jean-Luc Colombo is and your connection with him and why we should all know him and drink his wines.
Okay, well first, let me say, I don't mind doing it again. I do it all day long. That's what I do for a living. But Jean-Luc is close to my heart, so I don't mind expressing him. And thank you for this opportunity. I love this idea. They tried to steal it, I want you to know. Well, I think this is a great idea.
Well, thank you. I'm excited about it. Good. Especially now in video form.
I think you ought to copyright this.
Well, you know what? I should probably talk to somebody about that.
You should. So Jean-Luc and I are old friends. We've known each other for almost, I guess 30 years. And he wandered into my office. I was running a distributor in New York City.
Okay.
And this is 1990, and we were the cutting edge of distributorship in New York City, a garage wholesaler.
Okay.
And Jean-Luc was attracted to that mentality that we had. And then after we met, we realized we were very close, not just in physical looks, because we look alike, but in desires and in our, what we like from the wine business, and it's been a very interesting relationship.
Okay.
That has grown in a number of different ways, which is also a very nice piece to happen in the wine business.
Well, if you're still 30 years later, it must be.
You're still friends,
right? Yeah.
But I introduced him in 2000 to Palm Bay, and he moved into Palm Bay as on the national side. I came aboard and became his portfolio manager, and then in 2014, after developing his brand with Palm Bay, I moved over and decided that I really wanted to focus, and that Jean-Luc would give me that opportunity, so that I could just work his brand and expose it to the United States.
So for the entire United States, that's all you for?
That's all I do, is I run the United States market. I visit about 28, 30 markets a year.
Wow.
And I love it. I mean, I do love the wine business. I've been in the business, I hate to tell you, 44 years.
That's great.
I started when I was 2, and and if you believe that, I want to sell you a lot of Jean-Luc Colombo. I'll tell you that. But I've been in the business. I started in Manhattan, and I'm a Francophile. So our profiles, Jean-Luc's and mine, are similar, and they match well. But let me tell you more about Jean-Luc Colombo, because he's really the important point. And that is that he is the cutting edge of the Rhone Valley. He's been called the Wizard of the Rhone. Robert Parker called him a revolutionary enologist in 1985. I mean, every wine writer under the sun has been extremely positive with Jean-Luc Colombo. He has over 300 scores of 90 plus on his wines.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. It's quite a statement.
I don't know anybody that has as many scores as Jean-Luc has, really. And it made my decision easier, to come to work for him, because I see the potential that is underneath Jean-Luc's umbrella. So he started by graduating from the University of Montpellier in 1982, where he met his wife who is a pharmacist, as well as he is graduated as a pharmacist. And they moved to Cornas together, where they decided to not open a pharmacy. Lo and behold, they decided to open an enology lab. And they did that because they saw that the Rhone Valley really needed support and direction. He really is the modern element that appeared and that is directing the Rhone Valley since the mid 1980s, but really very outspoken, very concerned about quality. He believes that the Rhone makes the best grapes in all of France, and they just need some direction in how to manage it. Now, why do I say that? If you go back in time to the mid-80s, it was very common that winemakers were making things as their grandfather and great-great-grandfather, and all the history of the Rhone. And what they would do is they would make wine in these old foudres. A foudre is a barrel that is 500 liters or bigger. And they would make wine year after year in the same barrel. And what they would do at the end of the vintage is wash the barrel out and start again the next vintage. But inside the barrels would be tartaric crystals literally the size of my arm. And inside those tartaric crystals would be Brettanomyces and all sorts of bacteria. So the next vintage would come along, the next vintage of great grapes. And just imagine 1982, 1983, 1984, 85, and the grapes are affected by Brettanomyces, which is very common in the Rhone, and every vintage tastes the same: dried out, leathery, tarry, sandalwood. I mean, just really poor. Colombo said openly to the French press, people in the Rhone don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to make wine.
See, I want to have seen the backlash over there.
The backlash still exists today.
Does it?
2020, here we are, and people still talk about this maverick coming over telling me how to make my wine. Well, he was really trying to get people to look at the process and make it better. And, the people that listened have, definitely benefited by what Jean-Luc has done. And it's history today. You can go back and look at it in almost any book that talks about Colombo. He really has affected the direction of the Rhone Valley. One of his big things is that he de-stems. And almost all of his wines are de-stemmed. And the basic concept behind that is he believes that the fruit qualities are so good, they're so rich, that he doesn't want any brown or green tannins from the stems to get in the way with your perception of the fruit and the purity of the fruit, of the blueberries that come from Syrah, for example, the violets that you get in every Syrah, blend that he makes.
And was that a big innovation of his by comparison to all the neighbors when he started? Is that something that's
nobody
very Jean-Luc Colombo?
It was very common, especially in Cornas. It was very common. Leave your stems in. Make these big wines. One of the biggest producers of Cornas, his name was Augustus Clapp. Unfortunately, this man died at the age of 93 just last year. And he really was the father of Cornas. He and Colombo were called the kings of Cornas. August because he left the stems in and he created this bombshell of a wine, and Jean-Luc because he took the stems out and he created this wine that had this purity of fruit and that was always higher in acid and very balanced. But August Clapp was the type of man, he made a wine that you couldn't taste his wines for 10 to 12 years because they were so coarse. You couldn't drink them for 25 years, but at the end of 25, you get down on your hands and knees and say,
Amazing, yeah.
It's a blessing to have the wine. Well, Colombo came to the Cornas vineyards and said, first of all, people aren't waiting 25 years any longer, but also it clouds the nature of the fruit qualities that are coming out of Cornas. So he basically rediscovered Cornas by destemming and by controlled fermentation. And by that I mean he does not allow fermentations to run away and blow off your fruit qualities. His fermentations never go above 82 degrees usually. Reason being that as the fermentation increases to 100 degrees, which it will if you let it run its course,
Right.
it will blow off all your fruit qualities and it'll create another dimension, which is not always the most pleasant. So Colombo was a fan, like a biologist like he is, of controlling the fermentations and making sure that the fruit qualities weren't lost. So very, very important factor. Another factor is he stopped using foudres. He uses only barriques, small barriques, 225-liter barrels, French oak, and got away from the fermentation in these foudres, and he does stainless steel fermentation.
Okay.
In fact, they're experimenting right now with cement vat fermentation, but getting away from the use of old oak that might be affected in some way that could affect the style and taste of the wine. He is one of these characters that changed the direction of the Rhone Valley by winemaking methods, and his philosophy is that he wants the winemaker to have the best possible fruit and situation, and then allow the winemaker to make decisions in how they will finish the wine to their own style, whether it's oak, whether it's lees contact, whatever the process is. But he wants people to understand that the quality that comes out of the Rhone is really exceptional. And that's what's gone on with him getting 300 scores of 90 points. I mean, it's phenomenal how many people have just turned their head and said something about Colombo, most of the time in a good way. But sometimes, that Colombo, he's changing the way we're making wine. Well, he's not really doing that. He's just telling people that they have the quality in their hands, and it's up to them to do what they want with it.
Now, I'm sure that at some point you're going to get into this, but can you tell me a little bit about his wife and her role?
Sure. So, Anne Colombo, his wife, is... first of all, it's a wine-centric family, including the dogs. The dogs help. If you were to visit Colombo, and I welcome your visit, you could send me an email, and I would set you up with anybody out there that wants to go and visit him. Please, when you get over there, before you get over there, send me a note. I'll set you up, and you can visit with them. Because, at his dinner table, he's feeding his dogs the exact same food that he's feeding you. His dogs live extremely well.
Apparently.
He has an open hearth living room, an open hearth fireplace in his living room that he cooks on. So it's a bit of a throwback.
That sounds awesome.
It is, and his wife is just marvelous. You know, I actually told him that if he wanted to divorce his wife, I'd marry her.
There you go.
I mean, she's just so wonderful. She's a peaceful, spectacular woman. She is the first woman to be president of a Northern Rhone appellation. She is the president of Cornas since 2016. And that is really historic, in particular for the French. It's rare. In addition, she is the first human, male or female, to map Cornas legally. As president of the AOC, she went about, as I've always said about her, she's connected to the land, and mapped the total appellation. And by the way, that's also available if you wanted it. I can send you one. It's a 2 by 3 foot map of all of Cornas.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send you one.
Yeah, please.
But she is, woman on record. She's tied to the vines. She runs all the picking crews. She's extremely knowledgeable and quiet. The opposite, I shouldn't say the opposite. Jean-Luc is not quiet, but he's very knowledgeable, so I didn't mean to cut that. But she's the opposite of him in the way of personality, where Jean-Luc is very forward and always out there.
You probably need that together for a good relationship.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so what's their daughter like?
So their daughter is their only child,
Okay.
Laure Colombo, Laure. And she's one of the finest people that I've ever come across in the wine business. And I say this, not in any sexual way or anything. She is one of these people that is so knowledgeable, that is so crafted by the wine business and understands it, speaks from the heart all the time. I've never experienced a moment where she has not answered any of my questions in detail, and she's just a pleasure to be around.
And which facets of the winery does she control?
She
What's her
is
role?
the official winemaker for the estates
Okay.
of Colombo. So she has 3 degrees, a business degree from Lille, which is a top business school in France. She has a viticulture degree from Bordeaux, and she has a master's in enology from the University of Montpellier, the same university that Jean-Luc and Anne got their
Pharmacy.
Their pharmaceutical degree from. But she also this is Laure Colombo, did 1 year as an intern at Chateau Aubryon in Bordeaux, in Grave. She did 1 year as an intern with Moët & Chandon's famous Dom Perignon. She, has tremendous experience in winemaking due to Jean-Luc. And then she finally said to Jean-Luc in 2012, Dad, I'm ready to come back and work in the winery. And she's been in the winery since.
That's great.
She's very, very talented. The 2016 Cornas we're tasting today is hers. The 2015 Cornas that got Terre Brûlée got 94 points, top 100 wines of the year by the Wine Spectator, is hers. I mean,
Well,
it's a very strong statement for a young woman who really is one of the finest people I've met as a human being, besides being a winemaker.
so very talented family. We're gonna pop out and we're gonna come right back in and have so many more questions for you. But stay tuned. All right, so we're back in the car, and for once we will not be driving because I have about 10 minutes before the next account gets here, so I want to chat it up. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was Les Abeilles.
Les Abeilles.
Les Abeilles. Great. Let's talk about pronunciation. But first, Les Abeilles is fantastic wines and has a really cool cause behind it. So I wanted to let you talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
And I'll show some pictures of bottles because I can never do this, but we're not driving. Authorities at home.
Well, first of all, Les Abeilles is a Côte de Rhone, Blanc, and Rouge. And Les Abeilles is the sub-name for Jean-Luc Colombo's Côte de Rhone, and it means the bees. So if you look at a label, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but those are little bees that are on the label. Let me just have it and do it this way. Can you see it? Oop, this way.
The red label might be better.
There,
too.
that's good. Wait, I don't know why, but okay. They are bees, and Les Abeilles is a name that Jean-Luc came up with in 1990 to represent a table wine coming from the Rhone. But you have to understand that he is very, very conscientious about the environment. Jean-Luc has always been sustainable. He moved to organic status in 2016 on all of his Cornas and Saint-Péray vineyards. By 2021, he wants the whole winery to be organic, EcoCert organic. But coming back to Les Abeilles, he's always been very conscious about what's going on with our environment, and the bees in the world are disappearing. If you haven't heard of the problem, it's called CCD, Colony Collapse Disorder. And the bees in America, the first place where this was noted, are disappearing at an astronomical rate. Maybe 2 years ago, I was quoting 1/3 of the bees in America have disappeared. We think it's up to 50% of all, and these are farmed bees, are disappeared. We know that in the Northeast, for example, where I'm from, 90% of all wild bees have disappeared.
In America.
In America,
That's
in the
crazy.
Northeast.
Oh, okay.
In Europe, it's even worse. 70% of all insects have disappeared. So this is not just an American problem, this is an international problem. And Jean-Luc got together with David Taub, the old owner of Palm Bay. Originally, David has passed away. They passed away in 2012. But we approached UC Davis to help support them in their research entomology department on bees. So 10% of the net proceeds of all our sales on Côte de Rhone Red and White go to UC Davis to fight colony collapse disorder of the bees.
That's fantastic.
And in fact, it's been very successful, and it morphed into a program in the UK.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's just everybody is conscious that this has become a major issue.
Yeah. I mean, if the bees die, we die. I mean,
A good exercise would be to look up Einstein and the bees.
Okay.
If you Google that, you will see that Einstein predicted that if the bees ever disappear, give mankind 4 years to survive. And the truth of the matter is that 75% of what you eat is pollinated by bees.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or
So
what you eat stuff that's pollinated by bees.
bees.
Exactly.
Right,
It's
right.
a huge circle.
So it's a huge problem that, presently we are not handling, but like we're not handling the environmental issues, but I think eventually we will, as a country, come back to our senses to stop some of the problems that are going on. But the bees are really, we don't recognize it. It's one of the most threatening issues that could be in front of us in the next couple of years. So I recommend that you go out and sell a lot of Les Abeilles, and we have actually neckers that you could use to pull attention to the bottle. And there is also a comment on the back label that talks about colony collapse disorder, and that we support.
And if you want to know more about it, you can go to the website www.beehelpfulprogram.com, which is BEE. I don't even know if this records backwards. This is how bad I am at technology. But there'll be something on the notes that you can read as well. So yes, please go out and drink some of this stuff. It tastes good and it's a good cause.
So, and talking about the wines, Les Abeilles Blanc is a blend of Claret and Roussanne, 80-20%. Wonderful, wonderful white wine. I call it my oyster wine. It is laced with acidity so that it is really cleanses the palate as you finish. The claret gives you the length on the palate, and the Roussanne gives you a citrus finish, which gives you length and just white and yellow flowers that come out of it. So it's a very delicate wine, but great wine for food. And do note, all of Colombo's wines are bone dry. They're all 1 to 2 grams per liter of residual sugar, because Colombo is a foodie. He believes wine is food, and it's really meant to cleanse the palate so that you can take your next bite of food. And now the red is made of 60% Grenache, 30 Syrah, 10 Mourvedre. It is also very, very unique. It's 100% stainless steel. There's no oak in it. But you wouldn't know that when you taste it. And that's because 20% of the vats are held back, left on the lees for 9 months, where they pick up a lot of phenolic compounds, which is nothing more than organic compounds that are expressive on your palate. And then that 20% is blended back into the vats. That's the secret. Shh, don't tell anybody.
And you mentioned that all of his wines are extremely food friendly, but for the Côte Rhone Rouge, for example, is there a dish that you just die to have with it, or something in particular it goes great with?
Well, I have to tell you, I think it's one of the cleanest Côte de Rhones. Since it's totally destemmed, you don't get tannins, any green tannins. You don't get the confusion on the palate. It's all about the fruit, the balance that he has. And by the way, Colombo's thumbprint is balance. All of his wines are extremely balanced. But what I would put with it, I would put, not steak, because then I would be doing cornas, but I would put any of your rich dishes, beef bourguignon, or even though that's pretty extensive, but hamburgers. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
It's a great quaffing wine, and you can drink a lot of it because the alcohol isn't outrageous. Yeah, it's 13.5 alcohol,
And it's very inexpensive, which
and
goes a lot for drinking.
and it's affordable.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Well, all right. Well, we are going to check back with you later. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we're back on the road. Actually, on the road this time. All right, so we have a little gap here, maybe 6 or 7 minutes before we get to the next account. Instead of an actual question, I love to hear behind-the-scenes stories. You got any crazy stuff that's gone over the winery, or a night that you and JLC got wasted?
Too
many of those stories.
There's a lot of stories of those, but I can't tell you about those.
Fair enough.
But I will tell you about something that I think, I've always said this about Colombo, and that is that he's always in the middle of what's going on. No matter what it is, he's always in the middle. And you got to ask yourself, what is he talking about? Well, I'll give you an idea. When Jean-Luc made the decision to change, he was with Remy Emmerich, and he was going to come aboard Palm Bay, and that was in 2001. He was coming over. I talked to him and set this up and the whole 9 yards. He was coming over to sign the contract with David Taub, the owner of Palm Bay. Well, so he, this is of course a long time ago, and he knew, he flew so much with Air France that he knew all the pilots, and the pilot invited him into the cockpit. And they are approaching New York, where Palm Bay is located. And in the cockpit, he's sitting there with the pilot, and the pilot turns to him and says, "Jean-Luc, something's happening at JFK. I don't know what it is, but they're not going to allow me to land. Do you have any other places you'd like to go?"
Wow.
And Colombo turns to him and says, "Well, I have friends in Philadelphia." Well, wouldn't you know it, it was 9:15 in the morning on September 11th, 9/11. And they had just shut down JFK due to the terrorist strike. And here is Colombo sitting in the cockpit with the pilot. Well, 30 minutes later, they landed in Philadelphia. 10 o'clock that morning, every airplane was
Grounded.
forced out of the United States or grounded.
Yeah.
He's one of the last planes to arrive in the United States. And this is what I mean about Colombo always being in the center of some issue, of some energy force. It's almost as if he attracts it. And that's what he does. He really works his winery. He works, the enology lab. He's been friends with every president of France. Where,
I'm about to ask you a different question.
Yeah.
Got you. President of France. Keep going.
Well, in 2015, his Cornas Terre Brûlée got 94 points in The Spectator and was given top 100 wines of the year by the Wine Spectator. And it's the first time that it's occurred. And he was very happy about it. So he went to the Élysée Palace, met with President Macron, and they took a picture of him giving him a bottle of the Terre Brûlée 2015, and he sent me this picture, and I, to this day, I'm kind of stunned. This is Colombo. He's always there. He's always involved in, some issue, some point.
So wait, when's he coming to get involved in Columbia, South Carolina?
Well, I don't
Colombo,
know.
I know you're watching this. Probably not.
Maybe someday.
Maybe.
You never know. You have to invite him and do a big wine dinner here.
Oh,
He has come to Charleston. He likes Charleston.
Wow, he hasn't even met the far superior city in South Carolina,
That's
Columbia.
correct. He doesn't understand.
Colombo, Columbia. Come on, there's something there.
There's a connection.
So real quick, because we have like 2 minutes before we get over here. You're talking about the Terre Brûlée. So you were just talking about Cornas, which is kind of the major theme of everything that we're talking about today. What does the name Cornas mean? And then Terre Brûlée or Brûlée?
Okay, so Terre Brûlée
Brûlée.
is the generic name that was given to the hillside of Cornas by the Celts, the original people that lived in the northern Rhone. Well, there are people even before them, but the Celts are kind of famous. The Celts, C-E-L-T-S,
Okay.
were people that came from the north, usually from more UK-based
And Terre Brûlée
area.
was their word, or Cornas?
No, what happened was they named the hillside Cornas,
Cornas. Okay.
which means burnt earth
Got
in
it.
Celt. That's the correct interpretation.
Perfect.
So
And-
Cornas is this very, very old name. Now, in France, you wouldn't pronounce the S normally, but in Cornas you do. It's in the south, and I believe it's because of the name that was given to the hillside.
It's very interesting. And why burnt earth?
Well, my interpretation is that during the middle to the end of summer, the hillside looks burnt out. There's a 30-degree diurnal change between the evening and the middle of the afternoon. And, of course, that diurnal change allows the vineyard to come back to life.
Right, every day.
So it's
Yeah.
not burnt off and destroyed. And it is one of the main points why Syrah does so well. It needs the heat, but it definitely needs the cool nights. That's the way you will capture the aromatics, the violets, the blueberries, the black fruits.
That's awesome. Thank you. Perfect timing. So, signing off. Maybe we'll get one more in. All right, we're back. Let's talk rosé. We had 2 rosés in the bag today. Tell me about Jean-Luc Colombo and rosé and these delicious things we've been drinking.
Jean-Luc Colombo Rosé. It's a fabulous story. And so it has to start in 2003. Jean-Luc and I got together. I was the portfolio manager for Palm Bay, the national importer, and I proposed to Jean-Luc that we create a rosé. Now, Jean-Luc is very unique. He comes from the town of Marseille, which is the capital in my world of rosé. It's southern France, right on the border, on the Mediterranean. And he's always loved the area, the environment, the wines that come from there. Jean-Luc actually has purchased 100 acres of really forgotten land and planted rosé and white wine in the region. And so he created this Cape Blue Rosé. 2003 was the first vintage. It didn't take off really until 2009 as the rosé craze was occurring in America, and now it has become one of his largest items, and it is that way because he makes it in a very, very unique manner. Now you got to say, yeah, what's wine, rosé? What makes it so unique? Well, I'll tell you, being a pharmacist first and being a biologist, meaning the pharmacy side of it, he really came up with a system to make this rosé that is extremely special. He cold soaks the wine, the grapes, for 10 hours and gets this very light pink color. And the cold soak is done at 50 degrees, which is below fermentation. And that just stays for 10 hours. Then he takes it, bleeds the vats. They call this process saignée, which is the term for bleed. For blood. And he bleeds the vats from the bottom and takes them and ferments it for 3 weeks at no higher than 65 degrees. Now, it's an interesting concept because when you start fermentation, yeast cells build up momentum and they increase the heat of the vats, and that speeds up the process of fermentation, so much so that a normal fermentation really can take just 7 days and will heat up to 100 degrees, and it'll blow through the fermentation. But when you do that, you blow out the primary aromatics. So Colombo decided to keep the temperature down to 65 degrees, and what occurs is your primary aromatics remain intact in the wine. Now, what are the primary aromatics? It is strawberry, rose, banana, watermelon. It are these aromatics that stay in the wine and that help make the wine appear aromatic and fruity, but it is bone dry. 1 to 2 grams per liter of residual sugar below the human palate to taste sugar. And then it finishes with this wonderful long finish. Now, it's made with Syrah and Mourvedre, which are 2 big red varietals. And it's a very important point. Nobody makes rosé with these 2 varietals alone. And that's because these are expensive varietals. So a lot of people use lesser varietals in their rosé, and there's 25 varietals in the south of France that you can use. Colombo again picks these 2 very special ones. For me, the wine is a quaffing rosé. Just let me down that bottle and then take the second one, and then if you want and you're still standing, do the third. Because it is a fun wine to drink. It's seamless in the way that it goes down through your palate or past your palate. So Cape Blue Rosé, a big winner, and by the way, at a great price. And it's at a great price because it's an IGT or IGP, which is the appellation. It's not the AOC, which demands a certain amount of money for the AOC. It is a larger region of France, this IGT, that gives it a very affordable price. So enjoy it because it's well made at a great price. Now that is our introductory rosé. We have a reserve rosé that Jean-Luc decided to make. It's called La Dame de Rouet, and it is a AOC. It's a Coteau d'Aix in Provence, and that is a small appellation just north of the town of Marseille, and it's right south of a mountain range, which interrupts with the production level, so that it is a small appellation. But he makes it out of Syrah, Sanso, and Grenache, 40-40-20. And it is most unusual because it's the only wine in the line that does not is not destemmed. And for that reason, he does that because he does not want any oxidation. Once you pull the stems in a vat of grapes, you end up forcing oxygen into the grapes, which will oxidize and change the flavor profile of the primary aromatics. So by not destemming and by going through no malolactic fermentation, you keep the original acidity level and fruit characteristics of that wine. So it's very, very unique, because then he takes it, puts it 3 to 5 months on its lees, where it develops phenolic activity, compounds, organic compounds that enrichen the center of the palate. So that makes it really a very complete, long, very floral. And I challenge you to count the time that it stays on your palate. It's a spectacular glass of wine. I will put it against any rosé in the marketplace, bar none. Qualitatively, it's phenomenal. But do keep in mind, it's more money, and it's a reserve style 6-bottle case, and it is much more limited than the Cape Blue. But my hats are off to Jean-Luc and his wife, because they really came up with the philosophy behind these wines, and they stand out. And once you taste them side by side, you will see they are absolutely stunning examples of Provençal rosés, and they're both affordable pricing. So enjoy, sell them well, drink more, and I promise you'll enjoy that night. And you'll remember every second of it, because the alcohols aren't out of sight, they're in balance. Thank you.
You couldn't have timed that more perfectly. Here we are. Thank you. Okay, so this is no, you can't look it up yet.
I gotta
so
look
this
it
was
up.
this was my question was, what does Jean-Luc Colombo think of Jean-Luc Picard? And you have no idea who Jean-Luc Picard is.
I don't know that I know his name. No, I'm sorry.
So I don't even. You're gonna next time you talk to Jean-Luc, I don't know who the most famous Jean-Luc is. It's either Jean-Luc Picard or Jean-Luc Colombo, but I feel like it's probably Jean-Luc Picard. Do you know who Patrick Stewart is?
Yes.
Who is that?
Well, I know the name Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart is a very famous bald actor who is known for several roles, but his main one is
yes.
Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise for Star Trek.
Oh, now I understand.
Come on!
Well, no, it's because I'm a Kirk fan from way back when.
Oh, there
watching
it is.
every Star Trek, every movie, but not the modern shit. That modern shit sucks.
You're killing me. Listen, all day long.
Hey, there's a new Star Trek out. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's called Picard.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, now we're starting.
Every part of that just made me happy. That's what I was looking for.
Well, okay. Well, it's not the most famous Jean-Luc, I'll tell you that.
you tell Jean-Luc Colombo that. All day long, that's what I'm thinking of.
I don't think he knows who he is.
Everybody.
No, come on, that's very American. Come on. You know.
Well, okay, so this is...
They talk a bit different.
well, okay, wait. So that's a perfect segue. So,
Yes.
So one of the questions that I always ask everybody is what their unpopular opinion, something that they hold true, but the masses do not. And one of my unpopular opinions is that I would much rather watch Picard than James T. Kirk any day of the week. So there's my unpopular opinion.
Oh, that's a very bad opinion. I don't know.
It might even be kind of popular.
Well,
do you have an unpopular opinion?
No, I don't know that I do.
Other than the Kirk thing, which in my opinion is unpopular, but
I
know everybody likes Kirk. He's
James T. Kirk.
If William Shatner's watching this, I'm kidding. You're amazing. You know Patrick Stewart, but you're amazing.
I love William Shatner. He's just great.
He is.
Yeah. No, I don't think I have an unpopular I'm probably due. You'd have to dig it up for me.
Well, you know what's funny is like you're gonna be driving around in Charleston tomorrow. And you're gonna text me and go, actually, I hate this.
I remember now.
Yeah. So that's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You don't hurt my feelings. Okay. All right. Well, we're almost at the end of the day. Any other Jean-Luc Colombo stories that I haven't heard, or anything that we haven't just mentioned about all these amazing wines, or?
Well, there are tons of stories, and they're stuck somewhere in the recesses of my brain that will come out upon a moment's pull.
I'll say, do I have to have the right question to ask?
The magic pull. All I can say about Colombo is that he's a fascinating character, and he has both sides in him. He's not always pleasurable because he's an entrepreneur, like most entrepreneurs, that kind of look for building their business and all that. But I just find him to be a fascinating winemaker that has tremendous skills, and I invite all of you to come to France at the same time and visit with Jean-Luc. I'll make sure he's there.
That'll be great.
Oh, if you want to have a party, nobody knows how to throw a party better than Colombo. Nobody. And I'm serious when I say that. He will blow your mind with what he does. Whether he cooks for you and cooks steaks that are 4 inches thick, or whether he hires a band to come and play while you're there. Last time I was there, we were talking about a brass band playing, walking around his winery, and we all were following.
That's awesome.
He just knows
how fun and hospitable. That's how he sounds.
And by the way, you have to ask him, can I have a ride in your boat? He's got a 35-foot Boston Whaler that is really something else, and he will take you for a spin if you say, can we go fishing?
The winery is in Cornas, right?
It's in Cornas, but it's where his boat is the Côte Bleue, where the rosé comes from.
Well, I was going to ask, is that where does he live generally?
In Cornas.
In Cornas, okay, that's awesome.
He's building a second domain in the Côte Bleue, but there's nothing there but a couple of vines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but he's digging a hole actually in the ground right now to bury himself. Because when the American tariffs come off, it'll all blow this thing apart. I don't know.
That's the best part about this podcast, because in 3 weeks from now, whenever I actually air it, we will all have heard that the ridiculous idea of 100% tariffs was turned down, nothing happened, and we're all going to be very happy and safe. That's what I'm predicting in 3 weeks from now, and we won't be destroying the entire wine industry and every part of it. So that's exciting.
I definitely hope that you are 100% correct.
God, me too.
Because we just don't need to be fighting the battle of Airbus or Amazon's taxation over the wine business.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not equal.
Well, I mean, I don't even know that I don't think anybody can paint an accurate picture of what would actually happen. But I mean, you don't really think about how many different jobs are created, how many different effects would be felt, for the international market, the European market, and for domestic wines. It would affect everything.
He'll put a lot of people out of business in Europe.
Yeah.
Or redirect their business away from America, and they won't come back. Because when they lose the marketplace here, it would take them literally decades upon decades to reclaim that ground. And they would rather do it in China or in other markets around the world, which are opening up because the world is becoming more sophisticated.
Right. China's huge. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, it does a lot for France. This isn't how we needed to get here, but we're talking about it. It does a lot for them, but also, in America, it's not like domestic wines are suddenly just going to move on to every wine list and everybody's going to be happy. You're going to have a lot of independents and small distributorships, which is all the drivers, the reps, everybody, and then mom and pop places are definitely. I can't imagine how they'd be able to survive through that.
No, it'll be a devastating attack on the American economy, and in the end, it's going to be put on the cost of it will be put on the American consumer, and to me, there's no reason why that would be the case.
But again, none of this matters because by the time you're watching this, nothing will have happened. That's
I
my
think I
prediction.
love you.
well, right back at you. All right, well let's close on this. In the show notes, everything that we'll talk about, proper spellings. We're going to put Ian's personal email address for anybody who wants to go to Cornos. He will ensure that Jean-Luc Colombo will be there, and he will take you for a ride on his boat. But otherwise, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and I love your idea. Do me a favor, copyright it quick.
I appreciate that. If anybody's wondering, this is copywritten already.
Oh.
At least that's what we're saying. But all right, well, signing off.
And thank you all. Enjoy Jean-Luc Colombo.
Enjoy.